The jungle was silent. Only the sound of strange insects and the soft rustle of alien leaves filled the air. A thick fog covered the ground, and the sky above was hidden behind heavy clouds. Somewhere deep inside this wild forest, a broken spaceship rested like a giant skeleton. For years, no one had touched it. The ship was abandoned, forgotten, and left to rot. But today, someone returned. A man stepped out from the thick mist. His armor was scratched and old, but still strong. His boots sank into the wet ground as he walked toward the wreck. His name did not matter yet. What mattered was why he came back. He needed a part, just a small part, nothing more, nothing less. The man had once flown the ship, long ago. It was his. He had fought battles in it, traveled across empty space, and even escaped death many times. But one day, the ship had been damaged beyond repair and left here in this jungle. He thought it was finished, dead like the bones of a giant animal. Now, years later, he returned. As he came closer, the man felt something strange. The ship looked different. He expected to see dust, rust, and silence, but instead, he saw faint lights glowing near the engines, small, soft glimmers, like fireflies in the mist. His heart beat faster. That should not be possible. The power cells were dead. He walked carefully, each step echoing in the still air. His eyes studied every corner, every shadow. He whispered to himself, strange, very strange. The jungle around him felt alive, as if it was watching. Leaves shivered though there was no wind. The silence was too heavy, too unnatural. He reached the metal hull and placed his hand on it. The cold surface reminded him of old memories, the battles, the friends he had lost, the nights he had spent repairing broken wires. It was almost like touching a ghost. Then, something else caught his eye. Footprints on the muddy ground near the ship's door. There were clear footprints. Not his. Not old. Fresh. The man froze. His breath grew slow and deep. Someone has been here, he thought. Or maybe someone is still here. The idea felt impossible. Nobody should be living inside this ship. It was abandoned for years. No one had reason to come. Yet the signs were clear. Someone had walked here recently. His eyes narrowed. Suspicion filled his mind. Was it a thief, a soldier, a trap? Slowly, he stepped closer to the entrance. The door was half open. Rust covered the edges, but it was not locked. Inside, darkness waited. He paused, listening. At first, nothing. Then a sound, soft, quick, like something moving inside. The man's instinct sharpened. He had fought in wars. He knew when he was not alone. His hand touched the weapon on his belt, but he did not draw it. Not yet. Whoever, or whatever, was inside might not be an enemy, but he could not ignore the risk. He stepped into the ship. The air inside was colder. The smell of metal and dampness filled his lungs. The narrow corridors stretched into the shadows. He could almost hear the echo of his past footsteps, years ago, when he had walked these same halls as the ship's captain. But now, it felt different. It felt alive. As he walked, he noticed things that should not be there. A piece of cloth hanging on the wall, a small cup placed on the floor, even the faint smoke of a fire that had burned not long ago. Someone was not just here. Someone was living here. His pulse quickened. He tried to imagine who it could be. A criminal hiding, a lost traveler, or something else. The sound came again. A soft, fast movement, like bare feet against metal. The man turned quickly, scanning the shadows. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke into the darkness. I know you're here. Show yourself. Silence. His words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, it felt as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then, he heard a whisper of motion deeper inside. The man tightened his jaw and took another step forward. His hand rested near his weapon, but his eyes stayed sharp, searching the dark. Whoever was inside did not want to be found. Whoever was inside was afraid. And for the first time, the man felt something unusual. Not fear, not anger, but curiosity. What was hiding in his abandoned ship, and why did it feel like the ship itself was protecting a secret? The jungle outside grew quiet. The fog pressed against the broken windows, and deep inside the abandoned ship, two lives were about to meet. The return was not simple anymore. the return was only the beginning. The corridor was darker the deeper he walked, every step making the air colder, heavier. His boots pressed against the metal floor, and the sound echoed through the empty hall like whispers in a tomb. The ship was supposed to be dead, nothing but rust and shadows, but every corner told a different story. A forgotten cloth, a half-broken lantern still warm, and a chair moved slightly away from the wall. These were not ghosts of the past. These were signs of the present. His mind worked quickly. Someone was here, not long ago, maybe still inside. The man's hand brushed against the weapon on his belt, but he kept it low. He had seen enough battles to know that rushing with fear only invited death. Instead, he moved slow, listening to every detail: the dripping water, the faint hum of energy deep in the ship's bones, and something else, a softer sound, breathing. He stopped. The corridor ahead split into two paths. The left one led toward the control deck, the right one toward the storage bay. He remembered this place well. He had built half of it with his own hands. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening carefully. The breath was faint, but it came from the right. Someone was hiding. The man turned, his steps light but steady, and followed the sound. His eyes scanned the shadows, searching for movement. The ship seemed to resist him, every beam and corner groaning as if warning him to leave. Yet he pushed forward. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. At the edge of the storage bay, he paused. The heavy door was half open, leaving just enough space for him to slip through. He touched the frame gently. It was warm. That made no sense. The power should have been gone years ago. Inside, the bay was dim, lit only by thin beams of pale blue light sneaking through cracks in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air, but on the floor he saw patterns, footprints, small and bare. They moved back and forth, circling a corner of the room where shadows were thicker. He felt eyes on him, watching, waiting. Slowly, he raised his voice, steady and calm. "I'm not here to hurt you." No answer. He waited, letting the silence work. Sometimes fear breaks faster when it stretches too long. He knew that. He had seen it in soldiers, in enemies, even in himself. Then it came, the faintest rustle. A figure shifted in the darkness. He caught the gleam of light reflecting on skin. Not pale, not human, blue. He narrowed his eyes, holding back his breath. At first, it was only a silhouette, thin, delicate, but strong. Then, as she stepped a little into the light, he saw her clearly for the first time. She was young, not a child, but not fully grown in human terms either. Her skin glowed faintly like polished sapphire, smooth and flawless. Her long hair, bright like liquid neon, flowed down her back. Her eyes, golden and sharp, watched him with a mix of fear and defiance. The girl's body was tense, her hands trembling but ready to move. She pressed herself closer to the corner, like a wild creature protecting its last hiding place. The man froze, not out of fear, but shock. He had seen aliens before, fought them, traded with them, and even buried some of them, but never like this, never one that looked so human and yet so unearthly. She whispered something, her voice soft, broken. The words were not clear, twisted by an accent he had never heard, but the tone carried meaning. She was warning him. He raised his hands slowly, showing his empty palms. "I'm only here for a part. That's all. I won't take anything else. I won't hurt you." Her golden eyes narrowed, glowing brighter in the dark. For a moment, she did not blink. She studied him like a hunter studies prey, or perhaps like prey studies a hunter. The silence between them stretched like a tight rope ready to snap. He dared one more step forward. She flinched, pressing back into the corner, her breath fast and shallow. Her panic filled the air. Almost alive, the man stopped instantly, careful not to break the fragile balance. Then he noticed something behind her. Small objects scattered on the floor, a blanket, a cracked metal cup, a few dried fruits from the jungle outside. It was not much, but it was enough. She had been living here, surviving inside his abandoned ship. The realization hit him harder than any battle wound. This ship, his ship, was not empty anymore. It was her home. His voice dropped softer now, almost gentle. "You live here, don't you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Only her golden eyes flickered with something between shame and pride. The man's thoughts twisted fast. How long had she been here? Why this place, of all places? And most important, what was she hiding from? Before he could speak again, the ship groaned loudly, as if stirred by their meeting. A metal panel dropped somewhere deeper inside, the noise breaking the silence like thunder. The girl gasped and pulled back farther into the shadows. The man felt the shift instantly. Whatever she was running from, it was not just him. The air grew colder. The jungle outside had gone silent again, as if listening. And in that moment, he understood one thing with certainty. He was not just discovering her. He was stepping into something much bigger, something that had been waiting for him the moment he set foot in the ship. The discovery was no accident. It was destiny pulling him back into the shadows of his own past. The man stood still, his breath steady, but his mind racing. The girl's golden eyes never left him. Glowing faintly in the dim light, she looked fragile and powerful at the same time. Like a blade made of glass, beautiful to look at, but dangerous. If handled wrong, he did not move closer. One wrong step, and she would vanish deeper into the shadows of the ship. He had seen fear like that before: soldiers trapped in hopeless battles, animals cornered by fire. Fear made people unpredictable. Her chest rose and fell quickly. The sound of her breathing was sharp, almost painful, as if she had been running for hours, though she hadn't moved at all. She gripped the wall with her long blue fingers, her nails glowing faintly like the veins of some strange mineral. He lowered his voice, speaking as gently as he could. "You don't have to be afraid." The girl tilted her head, confused. Her lips parted, and she whispered something in a language he did not understand. The words were smooth, flowing like water, but alien to his ears. He shook his head slowly, showing her he couldn't understand. She frowned, her brows tightening. For a moment, she looked almost angry, like his ignorance insulted her. The silence between them stretched. It felt heavy, pressing down on the man's chest. Finally, he tried again. "My name is Elias." He touched his chest as he said it, his hand pressing lightly against his armor. "Elias." The girl's glowing eyes followed his hand. She hesitated, then pointed one trembling finger at herself. Her lips moved, shaping a word, a name. Though it was soft and hard to catch, it sounded strange, broken, like two syllables. "Cut short." He repeated the sound clumsily. Her eyes widened, surprised, and then narrowed again with suspicion. For the first time, he saw something shift in her. Not just fear now, curiosity. Elias lowered his weapon slowly and set it on the floor. Between them, the clink of metal echoed through the bay. Her eyes darted to it, then back to him. She was tense, ready to spring like a trapped animal, but she did not move forward. The ship creaked around them, as if holding its breath. He crouched slightly, keeping his eyes on her, his palms open. "I only came for a spare part," he said, softly, "just one piece. Then I'll go." He tapped the metal wall beside him. "This is your place now." The words were slow, simple. He hoped she could catch at least the meaning. Her golden eyes softened slightly, though her body was still stiff with panic. She stepped out of the shadows a little more, the dim light brushing across her face. Elias saw details, now small freckles of glowing blue across her cheeks, like stars scattered on her skin. Her hair shimmered like liquid light as she moved, and every step she took felt careful, like she was testing if the ground would hold. Her voice came again, quiet but sharp. She pointed toward the door behind him, then at him, then back at the door. She wanted him to leave. Elias stayed silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I will leave. But I need something first. A part. Without it, I cannot survive." He touched his chest again. "Live." He pointed at himself. Then he pointed at her, repeating the word softly, "Live." The girl froze. Something in that word seemed to reach her. Her golden eyes softened just a little more, though they still shimmered with caution. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the corridor. Both of them turned sharply, somewhere deeper in the ship. Metal had fallen, heavy and sharp. The girl's face changed instantly. Her panic grew, her breath faster, her hands shaking. She whispered something rapidly in her strange language, her eyes wide with terror. Elias saw it then. She was not just hiding from him. She was hiding from something else. The girl backed away, clutching a small metal rod that looked like a makeshift weapon. She held it out toward the sound, not toward him. Her fear was no longer about Elias, it was about whatever was moving in the dark. He realized this was no ordinary encounter. She wasn't simply living here by accident. She was running from something close. The ship groaned again, and a faint vibration moved through the floor under his boots. Elias tightened his jaw. He recognized that feeling. Heavy steps. Something alive was moving inside the ship. The girl looked at him, her golden eyes wide, begging him silently to understand. For the first time, Elias saw not just fear in her face, but desperation. She needed him to believe her, and strangely, he did. He reached down slowly, picked up his weapon, and held it ready, not at her but at the darkness ahead. Her eyes widened again, but this time not in fear of him. In something closer to shock, the two of them stood side by side now, strangers in the half-light of the broken ship. Elias felt the tension twist inside his chest. He had come here only for a part, a simple job. Yet now, standing beside this alien girl with glowing eyes, he knew that nothing would be simple anymore. The sound in the darkness grew louder. The air shook with each step. Something big was coming. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes narrowing. Beside him, the girl raised her makeshift rod, her golden eyes blazing like fire. For a brief moment, their fear connected them. To beings, different worlds, different lives, but both trapped inside the same ship, waiting for whatever was about to appear. The shadows shifted at the end of the corridor. The sound stopped. The silence was sharp, cutting through the air. Elias exhaled slowly. He whispered under his breath, "Not alone after all." The girl's eyes locked on the darkness. Her breath caught in her throat. Together, they waited, and the discovery, he realized, was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. The silence inside the ship was heavier than the steel walls themselves. Elias and the alien girl stood frozen, listening. Somewhere deep in the shadows, something was alive. The sound had stopped, but its absence only made the air colder. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly, each breath almost a gasp. Her golden eyes darted toward the corridor, then back to Elias, then forward again. She wanted to move. She wanted to run, but her legs were locked in fear. Elias lifted his weapon higher, steady in his hands. His years of war had trained him for moments like this, but even he could feel the strange energy pressing against his skin, like the ship itself was holding something back. He whispered, more to himself than her, "Whatever it is, it's close." The girl flinched at the sound of his voice, then pressed her finger to her lips, begging for silence. Her hand trembled as she held the metal rod tighter. Then it came. A new sound, low, heavy, dragging. Metal claws scraping against the floor, step after step. Slow and deliberate, echoing down the corridor. It was hunting. The girl's eyes widened, and she backed away, bumping into Elias's arm without realizing it. He felt her shaking. She whispered something fast in her own language, words pouring out in panic. He couldn't understand the meaning, but the emotion was clear. Fear, desperation, plea. Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't know what monster hid in his ship now, but it had her trapped here long before he arrived, and now it had found them both. The shadows at the far end of the hall shifted. Something large moved in the darkness. He caught a glimpse too fast to see clearly, but enough to feel the weight of its presence. The air seemed to thicken, and the ship groaned again, like it feared the thing walking its halls. The girl let out a sharp breath, then spun suddenly, pulling at his arm with surprising strength. She wanted him to run. She pointed toward a side passage, her eyes blazing. Elias hesitated only a moment. Then he nodded. They ran. Their footsteps pounded through the corridor, the sound echoing wildly against the steel walls. Behind them, the heavy scraping quickened. The creature had heard. It was following. The girl ran ahead, moving faster than Elias expected. Her hair glowed faintly in the dark, streaks of neon blue guiding him like a flickering torch. She knew these corridors now better than he did. This was her home. She darted through paths he almost forgot existed, twisting around broken beams, ducking under fallen panels. Elias followed close, his breath steady, his weapon gripped tight. He wanted to turn back, to see what chased them, but every instinct told him not to. Curiosity could wait. Survival came first. The sound behind them grew louder. Heavy claws clashing against the floor. A hiss, sharp and alien, filled the air like acid burning through steel. The girl pushed open a smaller hatch and slipped inside. Elias followed, forcing his broad shoulders through the narrow opening. They stumbled into a side chamber of storage, room filled with old crates and broken parts. The girl pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard, her golden eyes wild with panic. Elias turned quickly, weapon raised at the hatch. The corridor outside was still for a moment, then a shadow slid across the light. Something huge, something wrong. The hatch door rattled as claws scraped against it. The girl gasped and pressed closer into the corner, clutching her rod like it could save her. Elias braced himself, ready to fire if the door burst open. But the thing did not enter. It waited. The scratching stopped. The silence returned. Elias narrowed his eyes. That was worse. The waiting was always worse. He looked at the girl. She was trembling, whispering again in her language, her voice low and broken. He tried to calm her. It's gone, he said softly, though he wasn't sure if that was true. For now, she shook her head violently, her eyes sharp with fear. She pointed at the hatch, then at the ceiling, then pressed her hand flat against her chest as if to say, "It is not gone. It is hunting." Elias understood enough. Whatever it was clever. It didn't need to rush. It was patient. The girl's fear was more than survival instinct. It was deeper, older. She had been living with this thing for a long time, hiding from it, fighting to stay alive inside his abandoned ship. He felt a strange weight in his chest as he looked at her. She had survived here alone, day after day, with that thing prowling the corridors. No wonder she panicked when he entered. She thought he would bring the monster closer, and maybe he had. The metal above them groaned suddenly. This fell from the ceiling. Both of them froze, staring upward. The sound of claws dragged across the hull. Slow and careful, the creature was moving above them, crawling across the ceiling like a shadow given weight. The girl's hands shook violently now. She pressed her body deeper into the corner, her eyes begging him to make it stop. Elias held his breath, keeping his weapon steady. He could hear every scrape, every vibration. The ship's walls seemed to thin to protect them. Then, after a long moment, the sound faded. The weight shifted farther away, step by step, until it was gone again. The girl collapsed against the wall, her body shaking with relief and exhaustion. Elias lowered his weapon slowly, his eyes still on the ceiling. His heart was steady, but his thoughts twisted. He finally turned to her. "What is that thing?" he whispered. She stared at him for a long time, her golden eyes wet with fear. Then she whispered a single word in her language, a word heavy with meaning, though he could not understand it. And in her eyes, Elias saw the truth. This was not just her fear. This was her nightmare. The panic was not over. It had only just begun. The silence after the creature left was almost worse than the noise it made. The walls of the storage room creaked softly, as if the ship itself was breathing. Dust still floated in the pale light, and every sound of their own breathing felt too loud. Elias lowered his weapon, but he did not relax. He knew danger had not truly passed. The girl was pressed against the corner, trembling, her golden eyes staring at him like he was another threat. Her small chest rose and fell quickly, her grip on the metal rod so tight that her knuckles glowed faintly blue. Elias studied her, not with suspicion now, but with something else pity. She was too young to carry that kind of terror in her eyes. He crouched slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. His voice was steady, calm, like a whisper carried by the ship itself. "I'm not your enemy." The girl flinched at the sound, but she didn't run. She kept watching him. Her body was still tense, but there was hesitation now, not just panic. Elias pointed gently at his own chest again. "Elias," he said softly. Then he touched the floor between them, keeping his palm open. "Friend." The word was simple, one she might understand. Her eyes flickered, confused. But she tilted her head slightly as if the sound meant something. She whispered her name again. The same broken syllables as before, but this time louder. He repeated it slowly, clumsily, but close enough. Her golden eyes widened, and for the first time, her lips curved not into a smile, but into something softer than fear. It was a beginning. Elias pointed at the hatch they had entered through. "Danger," he said firmly. Then he made a claw, with his hand, dragging it through the air to mimic the sound of the creature. His voice growled low, an imitation of the sound they had heard. The girl's eyes went wide, and she nodded quickly, repeating a word in her own tongue. He didn't know it, but he understood its meaning. That was what she called the monster. Her body shook as she said it, her voice breaking, but Elias nodded, slowly letting her know he understood her fear. "Yes," he whispered, "it hunts." The girl's eyes softened again, just a little. She lowered the rod in her hand, not fully, but enough that it no longer pointed at him. Her breath slowed, though she still trembled. Elias looked at the floor where her few belongings were scattered. A thin blanket, a cracked cup, a bundle of dried leaves tied with string. He picked up the bundle carefully, studying it. Dried fruit. She had been surviving on scraps from the jungle outside. He set it back down gently and looked at her. "You've been here a long time," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but she caught the tone. Her golden eyes flickered with sadness, and she pressed her hand flat against her chest. She spoke again, slower this time, pointing at herself, then gesturing at the ship around them. Elias understood. This was her home. She had nowhere else to go. For the first time, he felt the weight of guilt pressing inside his chest. This ship had once been his. He had abandoned it, left it here to rot, and in doing so, he had unknowingly given her a place to hide. A broken cage, but still shelter. Now his return had stirred everything. His presence had woken not just her fear, but the monster as well. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry." She didn't understand the words, but maybe she felt them. Her golden eyes lingered on him a little longer before she turned her face away. Staring at the dark hatch, the fear had not left her. She was still listening, still waiting for the sound of claws to return. Elias leaned back against the cold wall, his mind racing. Questions piled up inside him. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she alone? And what in the stars was that creature stalking them? But he knew he could not ask her, not in words she would understand. Instead, he tried something else. He pulled a small ration pack from his belt and opened it. The faint smell of dried protein filled the air. He tore a piece off and held it out slowly, resting it on the floor between them. Then he pushed it forward, closer to her side. The girl's golden eyes locked onto it. Hunger flickered across her face, sharp and raw. She hesitated, looking at him, then at the food again. Finally, with slow, careful movements, she reached out and took it. Her hands trembled as she brought it to her lips, biting cautiously. When the taste hit her, she froze, her eyes closing as if she had not eaten something like this in a very long time. Elias watched quietly, his chest heavy. She was not just surviving here. She was barely holding on. After a moment, she opened her eyes and looked at him again. The fear was still there, but different now, softer, not just terror anymore, but something else, a spark of trust. She whispered a word, short and fragile. Her voice carried gratitude, though he did not know the meaning. Elias nodded, replying, simply, "You're welcome." For a brief moment, the storage room felt warmer. The shadows still pressed close, and the monster still lurked somewhere in the ship. But between the two of them, something new had formed, a thin bridge, a fragile connection. The girl shifted slightly closer, though she still kept the rod in her hand. Her golden eyes met his again, and for the first time since he entered the ship, Elias saw more than fear in them. He saw loneliness. And in that moment, he understood. She wasn't just hiding from the creature, she was hiding from the universe itself. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had expected. The night inside the ship never ended. The dim glow of broken lights flickered now and then, but most of the corridors were drowned in shadow. Elias leaned against the wall, his weapon resting by his side, while the alien girl sat only a few feet away, clutching her thin blanket around her glowing skin. The silence stretched between them, but it was no longer the silence of strangers. Something had shifted. Her golden eyes were calmer now, though they still darted toward the hatch whenever the ship groaned, or the jungle outside cried with strange voices. Elias could see the way her hands trembled, how every sound pulled her back into panic. She was living with fear carved deep into her bones. He broke the silence first. His voice was low, careful. "You've been here a long time." He knew she couldn't understand all the words, but he spoke them anyway. Sometimes tone was enough. She looked at him for a long time before answering, not with English, but with action. She pulled something from beneath her blanket, a small object wrapped in cloth. Slowly, she placed it on the floor between them. Elias leaned forward, curious. It was a piece of metal, shaped almost like a badge, etched with alien symbols, scratched, burned. She touched it gently, her fingers trembling, then pressed her hand to her chest. Her voice whispered a few soft words, her language smooth but heavy with sorrow. Elias watched closely. He did not understand the syllables, but he felt the meaning. It was hers. Her past. The girl looked away, her hair falling across her face, and for the first time, Elias saw tears glisten in her glowing eyes. She covered her mouth with her hand as if ashamed of the sound that escaped her throat. Elias exhaled slowly. He knew the look. He had seen it in war, in refugees who had lost everything. That broken silence carried more truth than any words could. He spoke softly again. "Family?" He pressed his hand to his chest, then spread his fingers outward, like the shape of people leaving. Lost. The girl froze, staring at him. Her golden eyes widened with shock, as if he had reached into her heart. Slowly, she nodded. One tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly in the light. Elias's chest tightened. He didn't need words. He understood. Whoever she was, whatever world she came from, she had lost her people. This ship was not just a hiding place. It was her graveyard of memories. The girl spoke again, her voice breaking, the words fast and sharp. She pointed to the badge, then mimed a ship flying through the air with her hand, then crashing down. Her face twisted with pain as she pressed her fists together, then opened them violently. An explosion. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. The pieces fit together. Her ship had been destroyed. Her people were gone. Somehow, she had survived and stumbled into his abandoned vessel, the only shelter in a hostile world. And then came the other thing, the monster that haunted the halls, the shadow that hunted her. When Elias opened his eyes, she was staring at him, desperate to know if he understood. He nodded slowly. "I see," he whispered. "You ran. You survived." She didn't know the words, but she felt the tone. She looked at him with something new in her gaze, not fear, not mistrust, but a fragile hope. Elias reached out carefully, placing his hand near the badge but not touching it. "Yours," he said simply. "Safe." He pushed it back toward her. She stared at him for a long moment, then picked it up and pressed it close to her heart. Her lips moved around his name softly, almost a whisper, as if testing the sound. Elias. The way she said it carried weight. It was not just a name anymore. It was a lifeline. The ship groaned suddenly, and both of them stiffened. The jungle outside howled with a strange, distant cry. Elias raised his weapon again. Scanning the shadows, the girl clutched her badge tighter, her golden eyes wide. But she did not panic this time. Instead, she looked at him. He realized then that she was not only afraid anymore. She was leaning on him. He gave her a small nod, steady and calm. "I won't leave you," he said quietly, though she could not understand. "Not now." Her eyes softened. She pressed her forehead briefly against her knees, whispering something soft, almost like a prayer. The air was heavy, filled with the weight of what was unsaid. Elias leaned back against the wall, his mind sharp with questions. What was that creature? Did it destroy her ship? Was it hunting only her or now both of them? And why did it feel like the danger was only growing stronger? The girl lifted her head again, her golden eyes glowing in the shadows. She pointed at him, then at herself, then made a crossing motion with her fingers to paths joining into one. Elias studied the gesture and nodded slowly, together, for the first time. Her lips curved slightly upward, not in joy, but in something like relief. It was small, fragile, and fleeting but real dot in that dim storage room, among shadows and fear. Something had changed. She had shared her secret, her pain, her loss, and Elias had not walked away. The ship was still haunted, the monster still lurked, the jungle still pressed close. But for the first time since his return, Elias no longer felt alone, and neither did she. The ship had grown to quiet again. Elias could feel it in his bones, the kind of silence that never lasted long. The girl sat near him, clutching the strange badge to her chest, her golden eyes watching the shadows with sharp focus. She was tired, yes, but her body stayed tense, ready to flee at the first sound. Elias knew the feeling well. Waiting for danger was sometimes worse than facing it. He checked the chamber of his weapon and adjusted the grip. The faint hum of energy inside gave him comfort, but not enough. Against something as large as the creature they had heard, it might not be enough at all. The girl's eyes shifted to him, studying the weapon, then his face. She spoke his name softly, almost like a question. Elias. He looked at her and gave a small nod. She pointed at the hatch again, her expression grave. She whispered her own word for the monster, the sound heavy with fear. Then she gestured sharply to fingers slashing downward, like claws ripping apart metal. Elias understood. It was coming back. The hull of the ship trembled. A low rumble traveled through the floor. This fell from the ceiling. Elias raised his weapon and stepped forward, placing himself between the girl and the hatch. She gripped her metal rod, though her hands shook. He glanced back at her and saw the truth in her eyes. She was ready to fight, but she knew she couldn't win alone. The sound of claws returned, louder this time, scraping hard against the walls, as if the beast was marking its territory. Then came the hiss, long, sharp, almost like steam cutting through the dark. Elias's heart pounded, but his mind sharpened. He had been in battles before, and he knew one thing well: panic killed faster than bullets. The hatch rattled once, twice, and then metal shrieked as something massive slammed into it. The girl gasped, stumbling back, but Elias held firm. He pressed the weapon against his shoulder and waited. The hatch buckled, then burst open, sparks flying as steel tore apart. A shadow filled the corridor, tall and broad, crawling low like a predator. Its form was hard to see in the dim light, but its eyes glowed red, burning like embers in the dark. Its claws dragged sparks across the floor, its movements slow, deliberate. Confident. The girl cried out, clutching her badge tight, fear tearing through her voice. Elias shouted back without looking at her, "Stay behind me." The beast lunged. Elias fired. The blast lit the corridor in blinding white for a second. The creature roared, its hiss turning into a scream that shook the walls. It staggered, then slammed its claws against the floor, dragging itself forward. Elias fired again, his weapon shaking in his hands. The beast twisted, dodging with unnatural speed, and the shot burned a hole through the wall instead. The air filled with the stench of scorched metal and flesh. The girl screamed his name, Elias. The beast lunged again, this time faster. Elias barely rolled aside as claws ripped through the floor where he had been standing. He hit the wall hard, pain shooting up his arm, but he kept his grip on the weapon. He turned, aimed, and fired into the beast's side. The creature roared, crashing into the crates, smashing them into dust. For a moment, Elias thought it would fall, but it rose again, slower, bleeding a thick black liquid that hissed when it touched the floor. The girl's golden eyes flashed. She ran forward, swinging her rod at the beast's face with a desperate cry. The rod sparked as it struck its jaw, barely making it flinch. But the courage in her scream cut through the chaos. Elias's chest burned with something more than adrenaline. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't take the part and run. That choice had already been made. He pushed himself to his feet, weapon steady, heart hammering. Together, he shouted, hoping she understood. She looked at him, breathing hard, and nodded once. The beast snarled and lunged again, claws tearing through the air. Elias fired 3 shots in rapid bursts, each one lighting the corridor with fire. The girl darted low, striking at its legs, forcing it to stumble just enough. The creature crashed into the wall, roaring with fury. The ship groaned as if it would collapse under the fight. Dust rained down, the floor trembling. Elias fired again, this time straight into its glowing eyes. The blast pierced through, and the beast shrieked louder than thunder. It thrashed violently, crashing into the walls, clawing at the ceiling, tearing its own rage into the ship's metal bones. Finally, with one last cry, it collapsed onto the floor, smoke rising from its body. The stench of burned flesh filled the air. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of the girl's quick breaths and Elias's heavy exhale. He lowered his weapon slowly, his hands trembling now that the fight was over. The girl dropped her rod, her knees weak, and pressed herself against the wall. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the silence heavy with disbelief. Elias stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "It's over." She looked at the smoking body of the creature, then at him. Slowly, she shook her head. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough for him to feel the meaning. "Not over." Elias frowned. He wanted to argue, but the truth was in her eyes. That monster was only part of the nightmare. Whatever destroyed her people, whatever hunted her, it was still out there. And now, it knew she was not alone. The girl stood shakily, pressing the badge to her chest. Her golden eyes locked on his. There was no fear in them now, only trust. She whispered his name again, not like a question this time, but like a choice. Elias. He nodded once, his jaw set. He had come for a spare part. Instead, he had found a war waiting for him. The jungle outside was silent, watching. The ship creaked around them, and in the heavy stillness, Elias realized the truth. His return was no accident. He was part of her story now, and together, they were walking straight into a fight neither of them could escape.